Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing Game 26 of the regular season between the San Jose Sharks and the Vegas Golden Knights, in which the Sharks have unfortunately lost 2-1. So their season-high 3-game winning streak, unfortunately, comes to an end here tonight against one of their biggest rivals in the league, the Vegas Golden Knights. And this was a pretty strange game from the get-go. In the first period, the Sharks actually were the significantly better team, I would say. Definitely had the better of the chances in that period and a higher volume of chances in that first period. And yet it was the Golden Knights who would score the only goal through those 20 minutes, coming from Max Pacioretty on the power play. And for those Sharks fans who may not know what a power play is, considering the Sharks basically got none here tonight besides in the last 25 seconds, a power play is when the opposing team gets called for a penalty. It's very rare to see that for the Sharks when they're against the Golden Knights, but that's what that means. And so in the second period, it was actually the Golden Knights who turned things around, and they were the significantly better team through that second period. And yet neither team would actually manage to score. So at the end of 40 minutes, where the Sharks and the Golden Knights sort of had this seesaw occur through those first couple of periods, it was a Golden Knights 1-0 lead. Come third period, the Golden Knights would manage to expand on their lead, making it 2-0 with Mark Stone's 10th of the year. And then in the final few minutes, the Sharks would finally manage to break Fleury's shutout, not get shut out twice in a row by Marc-Andre Fleury, and their first goal against the Golden Knights in over 100 minutes against them, as Timo Meier would make it 2-1. But unfortunately, it was just a little too late, and in the last few minutes, the Sharks would not manage to get the game-tying goal, and so they would lose it 2-1. First thing to talk about would be Devan Dubnik. He gets the call here tonight. No surprise about that. Yes, Jones was very effective in his showing against the Anaheim Ducks, but of course Devan Dubnik has a couple games under his belt where he's been very good, and so certainly no surprise to see him here tonight, and he was equally as effective. A very, very nice game for Devan Dubnik. In the end, however, while I'm certainly not going to blame Dubnik for this one, he does technically end up getting outdueled by Marc-Andre Fleury. You take a look at the goal that Meier scored. This was one that Fleury didn't have too much of a chance on. You take a look at the goal that Mark Stone scored. This was also one that Dubnik didn't have much of a chance on, but the major difference in the game came down to the fact that Fleury did not let in any weak goals, and Dubnik, I would say, did. While the Pacioretty one wasn't necessarily an easy save, considering the screen in front of him from Alex Tuck, it was one that Dubnik potentially could have had. So while Dubnik had a ton of fantastic saves, and Dubnik still remains one of the last reasons why the Sharks actually ended up losing this game, in the end he technically did get outdueled by Marc-Andre Fleury, if we're going to call a spade a spade. However, coming up to the following game, which will still be against the Golden Knights on Wednesday, I suspect that Dubnik will probably retain his spot as the starting goaltender for that one, especially when you consider the fact that the Sharks do end up playing a back-to-back once again this weekend on Friday and Saturday, so it's not as though Jones is never going to get a chance to see the net once more. I do think Jones will get one of those Friday or Saturday games, but that Dubnik will get the one on Wednesday, probably in a 80 to 85% chance for that. Technically, there's an outside shot that Jones gets it, but I would be rather surprised. Next, I'll be talking about Timo Meier. Meier obviously returning from injury a couple games ago, immediately scored in that game against the Anaheim Ducks when the Sharks won 6-0, and he had the only goal for the San Jose Sharks here tonight. Actually had a few very strong offensive chances here tonight, one of them on a breakaway that he ended up getting robbed by Fleury. And Meier, I would say, slowly in the past couple of games, especially since the return of his injury, has been improving offensively. One of the main things with Timo Meier, however, that I've noticed throughout not just this season but his entire career has been his defensive game has frequently been not all that solid. In fact, he is a winger, so it's not as important to his game as it is for, let's say, a centerman like Logan Couture and Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl, I should say, who do need sort of the onus is on them to be much more 200-foot players. But you take a look at a player like Evander Kane, who has also at times struggled defensively in his career. I find as though that Kane has been significantly better offensively this season, one of his best seasons in Teal, since he got here. But his defensive game has also significantly improved as well this season. But Timo Meier, his offensive game is not necessarily there. It's getting there, but it's not necessarily there quite yet. But his defensive game is also leaving a bit to be desired. We saw here tonight on the Mark Stone goal, I would be putting the blame on Timo Meier for this one. Nizov is covering the man coming down, which is Max Pacioretty. Carlson has the guy on the back door, and Timo Meier is not even that he has to back check to get back to cover Mark Stone. In fact, he just has to slow up to cover Mark Stone, but instead of being, doing that, covering the guy who's coming right down the middle and is in a perfect position to take a shot, he instead sort of floats towards where Erik Karlsson is for some reason, leaving Mark Stone all alone to take the shot from the slot, which basically gives Dubnik zero chance of being able to make this save. And so while I'm not saying that Meier needs to heavily focus on the defensive game at this point, I would rather he actually get to where he should be on the offensive side and then focus on the defensive game. But it is just something that I've noticed that Meier can at times slack in that area. And finally, I will talk about Curtis Gabriel, and maybe going to be one of my more controversial opinions, considering Gabriel has undergone a meteoric rise in the heart of Sharks fans everywhere and has quickly become a Sharks fan favorite for many people. But to me, Gabriel is not really a player who I was hoping to see all that consistently in the lineup. For me, I'm not someone who is consistently in the locker room and really getting a feel for what exactly is going on the bench and in the room for this team. So I cannot actually make any sort of comment about what kind of energy Gabriel brings off the ice and, on the bench. I can only comment about his performance on the ice, which has been obviously lacking, in my opinion, in these past few games and really just in every game that he has played. And that's just because Curtis Gabriel is just not very good of a player. When you take a look at a team like the Golden Knights, this is a team that is one of the best in the league, and they're a team that you could try to emulate. They've got a great top 9, a solid top 6 defensive core, as well as one of the better goaltending tandems in the league with Fleury and Robin Lehner, at least when Lehner returns from injury. The one thing that I didn't mention on the Golden Knights side is their fourth line, because that's really the one line that I don't think a team would want to emulate, because ever since the arrival of the Golden Knights into the league, it has featured the possession black hole that is known as Ryan Reeves on that part. You take a look at the game here just tonight, and I feel as though the Sharks got some of their best ice time, some of their best chances when Ryan Reeves was defending, or at least if you can call what Ryan Reeves does defending. And Curtis Gabriel is very similar. He is also a possession and offensive black hole for the San Jose Sharks, getting, 7 or 8 minutes a night and basically doing very, very little with it. I've seen some people go so far as to say that he was a big reason for the San Jose Sharks turnaround in these past few games, the fact that they managed to get this 3-game winning streak. And again, I don't know anything about what's going on in the locker room for this team, so maybe there is some sort of element with what he brings that actually caused that turnaround. But I feel as though some of the bigger factors would be more so, the turnaround for the Sharks goaltenders. Dubnik and Jones have been much better in the past few games. The turnaround of Erik Karlsson, the return to the lineup of both Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl, Rudolph Balcers emerging as a pretty, effective top 6 forward for the San Jose Sharks. All of these factors I feel like would trump whatever Curtis Gabriel has managed to do in the lineup. And I've also seen a lot of people saying, well, Curtis Gabriel is a lot like what Michael Haley was for the San Jose Sharks a few years ago, but much more skilled. Well, maybe they don't say much more skilled, but they do say more skilled. And to me, if there is a skill difference between those two players, it is extremely marginal, so marginal that it's pretty much unnoticeable. Curtis Gabriel cannot skate at all, really all that fast. He seems to have stone hands as well, and the play seems to sort of die on his stick if it ever even reaches that point. And now with all this negativity, I'm not saying that Curtis Gabriel should never be in the lineup for the San Jose Sharks. Playing him, let's say, that first game of the season that was against the Golden Knights, I thought that was a pretty decent choice. Maybe you want to have an offensive, a physical presence, in the lineup for a game like that. But playing him game in, game out, when you have players like John Leonard or Blickfeld or Shemilevsky riding the bench, players who will likely be a part of the Sharks' future moving forward, when Curtis Gabriel absolutely will not be a part of the Sharks' future moving forward. It just seems kind of weird to me. Yes, the Sharks do want to try and make the playoffs this season if that is a possibility, but is playing Gabriel over Leonard going to give anything more than maybe a marginal greater chance of doing that, when the Sharks should also be in sort of the mindset that they want to be able to get some of their younger players a bit more experience in this season? I'm not saying bench Brent Burns to play Ryan Merkley 25 minutes a night so that he couldn't get up to speed in the NHL, but I feel like it shouldn't be that controversial to say, hey, that guy who gets 7 minutes a night playing on the fourth line, maybe bench him, put in John Leonard to get, let's say, 11 or 12 minutes a night on, let's say, the third line, and, maybe something will happen, because it's obviously going to be a much better thing for the Sharks offensively, and I really don't think they're going to lose that much when it comes to benching someone like Curtis Gabriel. But again, as I said, probably a controversial opinion in the San Jose Sharks circles, because I know a lot of people really like him. It feels as though the Sharks are playing with kind of like 11 forwards, at least on the offensive side of things, game in and game out whenever he's in the lineup. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action on Wednesday. They'll take on the Vegas Golden Knights again, and they are now 0-4 against them this season. We'll finally see if they can actually get a win against their bitter rivals. Class dismissed.